Mais bien sûr, allez-y. Et
Okay.
c'est un plaisir de vous écouter maintenant.
Hello everyone. My name is Jean Baratgin. I am a professor of cognitive psychology and epistemology at Paris 8 University. Much of what we are going to present today comes from Maxime's PhD research, which is currently finishing. I should also tell you that Maxime speaks much better English than I do. Fortunately for you, he will be doing most of the talking. So if there is anything unclear, it will probably be my fault, not his. As we are working remotely, please don't hesitate to ask if anything is unclear. Please feel free to speak up. Maybe the next.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the next. Okay. Donc first, we present our positioning. For most of the 20th century psychology study reasoning within the framework of classical two-valued logic, where statements are either true or false. Inspired first by Aristotelian logic and later by Piaget's work, researchers assume that the logical structure of natural language reflects the principle of formal logic. This view was challenged by Wason's experiment in the 60s. He showed that people do not naturally interpret conditional statements in the same way as classical logic predicts. Instead, they often consider some cases are irrelevant, leading to what psychologists call the defective truth table. Several theoretical approaches were proposed to explain this finding. The syntactic approach assumes that reasoning is based on formal rule of inference. The semantic approach argues that people reason by constructing mental models of situations. Heuristic approach suggests that people answer results from simple cognitive shortcuts rather than strict logical processes. Despite the differences, these approaches all took classical logic as their main reference framework. In recent decades, a new paradigm has emerged: the probabilistic or Bayesian approach to reasoning. According to this view, human reasoning usually takes place under uncertainty. Rather than reasoning only in terms of true and false, people reason in terms of probabilities and degrees of beliefs. Two important findings support this approach. First, people tend to interpret the probability of a conditional statement if A then C as the conditional probability of C given A, given E. Second, the judgment under uncertainty generally follows the principle of probability theory. As a result, the so-called defective truth table is no longer seen as an error. Instead, it is interpreted as reflecting a probabilistic meaning of natural language conditionals. In this presentation, we will focus on study based on the probabilistic conditional introduced by the mathematician Bruno De Finetti. Maybe.
So first, we'll go from how we went from the defective table, which we'll talk about, to the notion of coherence, which is important in Bayesianism, and how this has reinterpreted the conditionals. Then we'll go on to the probability of conditionals. And lastly, we'll try to see some challenges to definitive semantics and answer some of them. Okay. So first, let's understand what the conditional meant for the old paradigm. So the old paradigm was when we were using classical logic, so propositional logic as the reference. So a conditional if A, C, so if the sun has set, night is falling, would be understood as the material conditional so the logical implication in propositional logic. Here you have the truth table. So in lines you have the value of A, and on the columns you have the value of C. And inside the table is the value of A implies C for each of the combination. So the sentence would be would mean the sun having set implies that the night is falling, if we were to rephrase it. And what we see in this table is that the truth of the conditionals is true when A and C are true, and false when A and C are false, but it remains true when A is false. So it's vacuously true. We will talk about this more in detail afterward. And just to mention, the material conditionals is could be said to be equivalent to the disjunction of C and the negation of A. So it would mean this would mean that the sentence, if the sun has set, night is falling, would mean the same thing as the night is falling or the sun has not set. And we see that these two tables are basically the same thing, which mean that they have the same meanings in logic. So one problem that arrived in the psychological study of those sentences is that, as we said, when the antecedent is false, according to the material conditionals, the conditionals remain true vacuously, because there is only two truth value in classical logic, true and false. And when we ask participants to rebuild the table themselves, they agree that when A is true and C is true, the conditionals is true, and they agree that when A is true and the consequent is false, the conditionals is itself false. But they are reluctant to give any kind of answer when the antecedent is false. Usually they say, I don't know. We put a citation here because the nomination, the defective conditionals, was not actually what Weyson called it. Weyson is just the one who found out about this discrepancy between the material conditional and the table built from participants themselves. But there is something interesting. He said then that subjects assume implicitly that the conditional statement has not two truth values, so not only true and false, but also a third one that would be irrelevant. Of course, this is unacceptable in the propositional logic, which has only two truth values. And so if we go from this defective conditional, so meaning defective in the sense that if we don't have the material conditionals, we are not following the rules of classical logic, which is our, back then, the norm of rationality. Therefore, we would not be rational. So what do we make of it? One thing we could do is actually try to implement this third value answered by the participant. So add a possible value as being irrelevant. So either for A, for C, or for the conditional itself. But then you have to answer, what do you put in the table itself? And as we see, we have four answers that are answered by the participant. So true, false, and the two question marks at the two in the bottom that are in black. But for the five others, you could say, what do we put there? and if you do the calculation, there is actually 243 possible combination. So we're going to see the three first that appeared in the literature. The first one was actually Definity's trivalent event. Three events, sorry. So is trivalent truth table, where you could call the third value void, and he actually built this table. This is basically putting void everywhere. So in Definity's understanding of the conditionals, there is a parallel that could be made with a bet. So we could say that we are betting on if A then C. And so if we look at the possible cases, either A is false or it's void. We don't know about the value of A. And then the conditional would be void itself. So and on the other hand, if A is true, you either get C, and then you would have won your bet. If you don't have C, you have lost your bet. And if C is void, the conditional itself, the bet itself, is back to being void. So void in these betting conditions means the bet would be called off, to make it more understandable. We'll see. We'll go to two other examples of trivalent logic, but there are actually many. It's just the first three that appear in the literature. So the second one is Cooper's conditionals. So if we compare it with Definity's, there are two values that are changing. So when A is void, instead of being void all the way, no matter the value of C, the conditionals is true when the consequent is true, and false when the consequent is false. And that comes from the fact that this is the Cooper goes against the Aristotle's argument that if A C and if not A C is paradoxal and should be a contradiction. So Cooper goes against this, and so he has to put those two values, because you could imagine if you don't know the value of A, you could you have two cases: either A is true or it's false. And so if in both cases C is true, then the conditional should be understood as true. And if in both cases it's false, it should be false. The last one is Farrell's conditionals, which is really also similar, but we only get a false when the consequent is false and the antecedent is unknown. And to Farrell's word, it's actually an ad hoc addition to the table. It's just because if we take Definity's table and don't put this false value in this case, we end up with the affirmation of the consequent, which is a non-valid argument, being true. And so we must have this false value here, but it's afterward that he puts this f value in the table. But we'll focus more on Definity's semantic next. Okay, so why we focus on Definity's semantics? Because Jean has actually asked the participant, just like Wesen did with the two-value truth table, to as participant to build the tables, but this time they were allowed to give three possible values, so true, false, and I don't know. And they actually end up building the definitives table. Once again, out of the 243 possibilities. So, but even though that's the simplest, this could be seen as the simplest table, this is actually what participants ended with. So. Okay. So more generally, definitives semantics can be seen as having 3 levels. So here in blue, you can distinguish the new paradigm from the old paradigm. The old paradigm is the paradigm where you use the classical logic, so it's only binary. And in the new paradigm, you have 2 levels. You can either talk about logic, but in a setting of trivalent logic, or you can go to probabilities. In the semantic of definitives, when you have when you go to the epistemic level, so the trivalent logic, this is not actually a logic by itself. It's superimposed on the b-valued logic. So the void value is not actually a value itself. It's just an intermediary value before you get to the truth of the event, because in the end, an event is either true or false. It either happens or it doesn't. It's more about, so when you go to the trivalent, or even when you go to the probability, it's not the event itself that can have values in between true and false, but it's your knowledge of the state of the truth of the event. So the event E is conditioned, dependent on your knowledge, here written K0. And so if you have knowledge about E, that it should be true, it should be false, sorry, you go to false. If you have knowledge that would lead to thinking that it's true, it goes to true. But if you are uncertain, or if you don't have any knowledge about what E should be, you go to the void state. And so then you can go even further, where the uncertainty is represented by a degree of belief. So being between absolutely certain that it's true to absolutely certain that it's false, so 0 to 1, but every value in between. And you could have two level inside this. You could have actual numerical value that make it possible to have computation of the probabilities, or you could have once again an intermediary level where you have qualitative value, which we'll talk about a bit also. Is there any question from now before I go on?
I think you can go on. We'll have a period of questions after your talk. No problem. Sure, everything's fine up to now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, that would have been easier to see this. Okay, so now we go on to the probability of conditional. So we spoke briefly about trivalence, but now we get into actual degrees of belief. And so we can, in an uncertain settings, you could say, let's say we have a set of chips here, and I say that I choose one at random. And in these settings, I could ask you what are the chances that the sentence below is true. Okay, so the sentence is, if the chip is square, it is black. In these settings, you would have to guess the value of the the chip taken at random. So that's what Politzer and all did in 2010. But that's actually the probability judgment task is actually introduced in the early 2000, and it's a new start when it comes to the evaluation of conditionals, because before that it was used only with truth tables and truth value. Now we go on to probabilities. So we are going to explore a couple of responses. First, maybe the most interesting one that is in clear opposition with the old paradigm would be to give actually the answer of the old paradigm. So to understand if we have an understanding of if the chip is square, it is black, as the material conditional. So if we have this interpretation in mind, even though this is supposed to be an interpretation that is set in certainty, if we allow to use this interpretation in the real world where there are uncertainties, this understanding would be the probability of the material conditional. So either A implies C, or here C or not A. So once again, the chip is black or it's round, so not black, not square, sorry, or it's round and black. So we can either, there is a couple ways we can get to the answer. First, we could do the computation directly. If we want to take an easier route, we can just say it's either a black chip, so one of those, or a round chip, so one of those, or any of those two. So basically, those 6 chips would fit the material conditional understanding, and with any of those 6, if any of those 6 chips were chosen, the conditional would be true. You could also do the reverse. If you look at the table, the only case where the material conditional is false is when the antecedent is true but the consequent is false. So when we have a square but it's not black, so this is the only case, so you would exclude it. And of course, the probability would be those 6 square out of the 7. So the probability you should answer if you had this interpretation would be 6 out of 7. The problem is that we never see this response. It's only responded in less than 2% by participant. Next, we'll go to the Bayesian approach, so the probabilistic understanding of the conditional. So according to this interpretation, the probability of the conditional should be equal to the conditional probability of C given A. So on the supposition of that chip being square, it is black. To compute this, we can either use this formula where you have the intersection of A and C on the probability of A, or which is equivalent, use Bayes theorem, Bayes rule here. And if we try to do it in an easy way, like we did with the previous interpretation, we would first focus on the square, as the conditional is dependent on these cases. So first we go only to look at the squares, and on those squares we would select those that are black, and we get 3 out of 4. This is actually the most common answer, which is found in many papers, above 50%. And lastly, we have a third interpretation that is of interest, not because it's supported by a framework, a normative framework, but because it's actually quite often chosen by the participant, not as much as the conditional probability, but there is a non-negligible part of the participant that answer this way. And this is to give the probability of the conjunction. So just to say the chip is black and square. Here we have 3 black squares, and so it is out of the 7 chips. So we have 3 black squares out of the 7. So the answer, the conjunctive answer in this case, would be 3 out of 7. And this appears in about 50% of the cases. OK. Niveau du temps.
C'est bon, une demi-heure.
Next, I just wanted to mention, because this was the actual object of Politzer and Holmes' paper, that as we said for definity, a conditional statement should be equivalent or should be understood as a bet. And so we could say that if the chip is square, then it is black, where you have to answer in true or false, or in the sentence is either true or false. You could think about it in terms of bet, and then you would ask the participant, instead of what are the chances that the sentence would be true, you would give, and that's why this is what they did. You would give the participant some kind of scenario where 2 characters are betting with one another, and one of them would bet that the chip is square. If the chip is square, then then it would be black, and then you would answer in what are the chances that the character who made the bet won or lost. And this is actually what they found. They found that either way, the participant give the conditional probability, and in similar manners. Okay. So going back to this general view of the definitive semantic, we are going to be interested now in the qualitative, so the intermediate level in the probabilities, because when we got to the new method of asking participants about the probability of conditional, and you could say even when we were asking them about the truth value, we never asked if those answers were actually hard to compute. Like, do they require you to think consciously about the answer, or is it something that comes naturally? This is actually the distinction between system 1 and system 2 in psychology. So system 1 being fast, automatic, and light on cognitive resources, and system 2 being controlled. So you have to consciously think this is slower, and it requires cognitive resources. So mainly working memory. Here we put Dennis and Evans as references, because this is actually in debate about how the two systems interact. Just to give you a quick overview, something that, yeah, the system 1 is the default system, and there could be some corrective system. So the system 2 would be a kind of a corrective system of the system 1. And Denis' models is more like you have a system 1 that builds multiple intuition that can enter in conflict, and the system 2 is only here to deliberate and decide which intuition should be should go first, in a sense. So this is some subtle differences, but sorry, yeah.
Wim has presented to us his theory about system 1 and system 2 last week. So
okay.
It's complementary with what you're saying.
Okay, perfect.
Keep on talking.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically, you could ask yourself, is the conditional of definitive interpretation easy to get, or does it require some cognitive resources. There is some elements that could point towards the idea that the definitive interpretation is actually cognitively demanding, and that the intuitive answer would actually rather be the conjunction. So the arguments are first that when you look at how children answer either about probability or truth value, they tend, when they are younger, to answer with the conjunction. So children having less cognitive resources, you would say, yeah, this is easier to compute the conjunction. Then we have also seen that people who are scoring lower on a general intelligence test also tend to answer more often with the conjunction. And lastly, when participants are asked to answer on over multiple trials, there is also a tendency to, in the first trials to have more conjunctive answer, which are then in the following trials usually corrected into the Bayesian answer. So giving the conditional probability. On the other hand, you could say that the definitive conditionals is pretty intuitive. I don't know if you managed to get the answer in the previous example, but it seems to come quite easily to participants to say 3 out of 4. And Jean also did an experiment where they used eye tracking to see, so they used the same set that as they did in their experiment in 2010, so the same chips as I presented earlier. And they looked at where the participants were looking at while making their answer. And what we see is that their eyes are focusing only on the part that are relevant to compute the conditional probability. So what we did earlier by focusing first on the 4 square and then look at the 4 black square out of those square, ignoring the wrong. This is what participants seems to do when we look at eye tracking. Okay. So this is one of the experiment I did in my for my PhD. The objective was actually to answer this question: is the definitive conditionals actually intuitive, or does it require some cognitive resources? And actually, the conjunction is the easier answer. So on the first line here, you have the example that we gave earlier with the material probability being 6 out of 7, the conditional probability 3 out of 4, and the conjunction 3 out of 7. But out of all those chips, you can actually make all those sentences. And for each of them, of course, there is a different probability. And what we can see from this set is that when you try to compute the probability of the material conditionals for those sentences, the probability is always above 0.5. On the other hand, when you look at the probability of the conjunction for all those answers, it's always under the threshold of 3 out of 5. So of 0.5. And what's interesting is that the conditional probability is sometimes above and sometimes under, and even sometimes equal to 0.5. And so we use this particularity of this set to actually get an easier answer where participants don't have to give us the actual numeric value, but only answer with more likely to be true, more likely to be false. And so it was in 2 experiments. One was including those cases where the conditional probability was 0 out of 5, sorry, 0.5, sorry. And some excluded it for the purpose of being easier, like just having two buttons. It's just simpler than 3. basically. And so with those answers, if we combine the answer for all those sentences, we can see that if they always answer more likely to be true for all sentences, they probably have the material conditional interpretation. If they always answer more likely to be false, they probably have the conjunction. But if they have the conditional probability, well, the definitive conditional probability interpretation, we can actually predict when they will say that it is more likely to be true, and when it is more likely they'll say that it's more likely to be false, and even when it's equal to 0.5. And to do that, we have used different paradigms that are well established to study System 1 and System 2. So to make some participants be forced to answer intuitively, and those and other participants who are allowed to reflect and give deliberative answers. So the first method that we used was using those kind of matrices, where we asked we given the participant one of those at the beginning of the task, and we asked them to remember this pattern, and that they will have to recall it at the end. So while they are doing the probability judgment task, which is not actually probability, but I hope you understood, they have to remember this set, and so they are not able to use their cognitive resources on the task itself. The second method is very straightforward. It's just to limit the time the participant have to answer. So if they don't have the time to think, they don't have the time to reflect, and so their answer should be also intuitive. And of course, they are also invited to give the first answer they get as quickly as possible. And with those two methods, we actually once again find that the most common answer, whether or not they had a limited amount of cognitive resources, lead to answering with the conditional probability. Well, to give answers that are coherent with the conditional probability. So the definitive conditionals seems to be quite intuitive and easy to compute. Finally, we'll go over some challenges definitive semantics have faced, and mainly two of them that I try to answer during my PhD. The first one is the case of what is called missing link conditionals and the relevance effects that is associated with it. So until now, we said that the probability and the truth of conditionals given by participant is in line with the Bayesian interpretation. But if I give you this sentence, if 2 + 2 = 4, Paris is the capital of France, most of us would be, what am I saying? What's that about? Okay. Although, if you look at the antecedent is actually true, and you look at the consequent, the consequent is also true. And according to the conjunctive sufficiency principle, or the centering principle, when you have A that is true and C that is true, the conditional itself is supposed to be true. In that case, we have true, but we are quite reluctant to say that if 2 + 2 = 4, Paris is the capital of France. So the relevance effects is actually the rejection. So the people are avoiding saying that this sentence is so accepting this conditional when there is no inferential link between the antecedent and the consequent. You could also say that the probability here of the antecedent is close to 1. You could even say 1. Same thing for the second one. And according to Stalnaker's thesis, the probability of a conditional should be equal to the conditional probability. That's what we saw earlier. That was actually found in the result of experiment. People actually did equate the probability of the conditional that was given to them to conditional probability, but of course not in those cases. So we'll try to answer why. The first answer that was given to this was what is called inferentialism. Inferentialism is to say that the conditionals itself, in its semantics, implies that a requirement for an inferential link from A to C. So it doesn't have to be a deductive argument, but you should be able to, in some way, get from the antecedent to the consequent. So this is not what we defend here, because this requires to add something to the meaning of the conditional itself. And what we are defending here is the suppositionalist approach, which is to say that this relevance effect is actually a pragmatic effect. So a pragmatic effect is so pragmatics is the branch of linguistics that is about how context affect language, and so this relevance effect would be a contextual effect. So in pragmatics, you could say that this could potentially be a conversational implicature. So something that it is inferred by the people when they are in a conversation. You could also say that it's a presupposition, which is there is a subtle difference between conversational implicature and presupposition that we are not going over in this presentation. But basically, it's everything that you presuppose of the general knowledge when you are in a conversation. But we have some results that show that neither of those seems to be true. So the relevance effect doesn't seem to be a conversational implicature nor a presupposition. So what then? What could it be? We are actually for ourselves trying to explain the relevance effect as discourse coherence, which is part of pragmatics, and we'll go over what this is about. So here I give you the sentence: John took the train from Paris to Istanbul. He has family there, and even though those two sentences are put together, and nothing implies that they are independent, you directly infer that he is going there to see his family, but nothing in the text itself says that. You just assume this is the case because why else would those two sentences would have been put together? And so that's what discourse coherence is we ask ourselves why we put two utterances together while we are speaking. Another example, if I said John took the train from Paris to Istanbul, he likes spinach. Even though there is no clear relation between the two utterances, so this statement might look weirder than the one we did before. Even then, we would try to get in some way to have a relation between the two. So you could say maybe Istanbul is renowned for its spinach among spinach connoisseurs, or maybe there is a shortage in French and he loves them so much he would be ready to do the trip to find some. So any reason there would be to put those two sentences together. If we go back to our example here, the problem is, why would someone put those two statements together? Okay, even if we scratch our head, it's really difficult to see why would someone say this. Okay, but here we didn't say that discourse coherence with the example we seen before. It was with a juxtaposition. It was just two utterances put together with no connector connecting them. And so here we have the conditional, but if we had said 2 + 2 is 4 and Paris is the capital of France, it's really hard as well to see why would anyone would say something like this, and same thing for a juxtaposition. The only thing
Maxime,
is that
Maxime, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. So
already,
how long would you need now?
Maybe I just finished for the discourse coherence, just to give you the
you stop after.
the result of discourse coherence. I will be short, I promise.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry for that.
No worries, it's us. And so just to sum up, in discourse coherence, here this is some of the relation that could be used to put two sentences together. So we won't go over all of those, but there are 4 in particular that are of interest, which are the result, the explanation, the violated expectation, and the denial of preventer, which are 4 relations that are supposedly compatible with conditionals. So here there is kind of the definition of those 4, but basically result and explanation are inferential reading. So this would actually fit with what inferentialists think when they talk about conditionals. This is sentences where there is an actual inferential relation between the two statements. But there is also violated expectation and denial of preventer, which are non-inferential reading. That is, when you get one of the utterances, you usually expect not to have the other one. So the other one comes as a surprise, either because you would expect to be less probable, or because those two are completely independent, and so there's no reason for it to affect it. Okay, just here you see that I've put in these examples some words in between the utterances. Those are markers of relations that emphasize and even constrain the available relation in between sentences. So this is actually what we used to evaluate if participants were able to have an inferential reading. Of course, everybody agree with that, but also non-inferential readings when it comes to conditionals. What we did is that we compared sentences in either a juxtaposition format, a conjunction format, or a conditional format, and we just like so we didn't put any word to emphasize any relation, so either inferential or non-inferential. We just put sentences that would fit better with inferential reading, so where the two were connected rather with an inferential link, and some where there was non-inferential relation, so one would be surprising given the other. And what we found is that conditionals are as compatible with inferential reading and non-inferential reading as juxtaposition and and conjunction are. So I'll stop there. I'll just go. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Jean and Maxime. We have a few minutes for questions and comments.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, please. Maybe. Should we keep the screen sharing, or is it fine?
No, we don't need the screen for the question.
Yeah.
We'll see you better like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for being with us from Paris.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't come.
Thank you.
I've seen that David Over was on the participants on the Zoom. So hello, David.
Oh, nice.
We talked about you.
Hi, David.
C'est des questions.
Do any people have questions? We'll read them aloud. Or you can check in the chat if there are questions. We have about 10 minutes. We'll check. We have a question in class.
Okay, well, maybe
you can come up to the front and...
Yeah, we have a question in the classroom. We have people in the classroom and people on the web, so...
Okay, how?
Yes, we can see you.
The microphone.
The microphone is up there, so go ahead with your question.
Okay, so I was wondering, I am not a like a formal logician by any means, so I was curious, like, it seems like you guys are looking for a model of the conditional that will work in many, if not all, scenarios. And I was just wondering, like, you know, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there just isn't, maybe people will think of things differently. And so, you know, the semantic model that you're sort of like refuting, that you have the three challenges to, maybe that works from some perspective, but this other one works from another perspective. So I was just wondering, like, how you think about the purpose of what you're doing. Thanks.
Okay, so me neither. I'm not a formal logician. We are actually psychologists, and to answer your question, the reason we are trying to get a unified model is that we are trying to model actually human cognition, and so we need a way to understand human cognition as a whole. So of course, maybe there is some cases where you would use specific logics, but what we are trying to do is to find one that would fit cognition as a whole. For now, there is indeed different logical system, but there is always some kind of misfit with cognition. And so we are just trying to figure out if there is any that would fit human cognition.
Also, there is not a lot of theory that do the link between logic and probability.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, you're definitely in the tradition of Hoxford and Chater and David Over that tries to show that probabilistic models are more appropriate to describe better many of the inferences that human beings spontaneously perform.
Yeah, but as we didn't get to get into the critics, but there is some, of course, with either definitist theory or more generally Bayesianism, and our work is actually trying to figure out if we can give explanation for those discrepancies still, or if the model itself is not a good fit. Yet the combination of the Bayesian theory and the pragmatic framework from linguistic for now gets to answer most of our problem. The general, most of them, not all of them, of course.
I would say that one of your results that is very interesting is that people rarely consider the if-then inference, the if-then conditional, as a not A or B, as classical logic presupposes. It's a very interesting one. There is a question on the web about the relation between inferentialism and suppositionalism. Would you like to comment a little on that? The question says, is there a link between the two conceptions?
Yeah, of course.
Maybe just differentiate, just insist on the differentiation between the two theses.
Yeah, of course. Just to clarify, inferentialism and suppositionalism are not actually like old paradigm versus new paradigm. They are actually two branches of the new paradigm. So they both defend the probabilistic approach. It's just that inferentialism think that there needs to be ad hoc elements that are needed to be added to the Bayesian theory to fit cognition, while suppositionalism just think that Bayesian theory fits is enough to explain the cognition, and we use pragmatics on top of it. But it's not like changing Bayesian theory. It's just the combination of pragmatics and the Bayesian theory, while inferentialism implies that there is a modification of the Bayesian theory to fit the cognition.
Thank you. Very clear. Two different conceptions of the Bayesian approach. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I don't see any other questions on the web. My assistant, who is now the boss in this session, says that we're sorry, time is over. Thank you so much, Maxime and Jean, for what you have done. It was great.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.